Hey Vandals, my name is Ben Peterson. I'm the Director of Broadcast Production for University of Idaho Athletics. Recently we've begun bringing on a lot of new team members to our ESPN Plus production crew, so I figured now is one of the best times to begin a series of videos that cover production basics in order to train new team members and for anyone interested, really. So this first video is going to be an overview of the control room, all the positions and elements that we have in here, what goes into creating a live production, and some possible positions that people might be interested in.
ESPN's coverage of college football this afternoon from Moscow, Idaho. Early fall, a beautiful day. The Idaho Vandals hosting the Cal Poly Mustangs inside the P1 FCU Kibbe Dome for two teams that are looking to get back on track after losses their last time out. We welcome you inside the booth here this afternoon, everybody. I'm Trevor Williams. Along with me is Ryan Phillips, Idaho Hall of Famer, former NFL linebacker. And Ryan, let's talk about this team, Idaho, Cal Poly, bull punt, which they got a review to go in their favor. Oh, little triple action to the near side. Emerson Cortez Menevar with a convoy to the end zone. And the Vandals go into their bag of tricks.
The first thing you'll probably notice about the control room is the two TVs and the speakers at the front. These are our multi-viewers. So the TV behind me, this is our vision switching multi-viewer, which means we use it to look at the cameras and make the live production cuts during a broadcast. This second TV is our graphics multi-viewer. We use it for quality of life sources, so we put our expression channels on there, a clock, and oftentimes a confidence camera. The speakers at the front of the room are set to program output, so they will output whatever audio we have going live to our ESPN transmission, which helps me transition into our first control room position, the audio mixer. One of my broadcast philosophies is that good or bad audio makes or breaks a broadcast. The viewers are willing to accept bad video, whether it's shaky camera movement, off colors, whatever. But as soon as you start getting bad audio, people are either going to mute the broadcast or turn it off. So the audio mixer we use is the Yamaha QL1, and it is connected to something called a Dante network. The Dante network is something of a master control for all of the audio that we have running through our different locations. It is audio over IP, which means it uses the internet to send lossless audio signals back and forth between machines. So everything from our camera feeds to our graphics machines to our commercials to our play-by-play announcers all feed into this machine over Dante network channels. Each channel is connected to a different fader. The faders are organized into buses that we can switch between using profiles. And then we have some additional control stuff on the side. So one of the most important aspects of any broadcast, especially one on ESPN Plus, is the music. ESPN has officially licensed music that a lot of people recognize, so it's very important that we maintain consistency across all of our broadcasts from the audio position. This computer up here doesn't run a whole lot. All it runs is something called Dante Controller that we use to patch different audio sources, but it also runs our Stream Deck software, which is this thing over here. We use this as a sound pad in order to play different music elements at different points in the show, which we can control through here. And we can fade that down, stop it, play different pieces of music. This position can seem very complicated, but once you understand the structure of the buses and which faders you need to pay attention to, it's very simple. So for all our ESPN Plus productions, I act as the primary producer, and then back here sits our assistant producer. They're in charge of things like communicating with a red hat if the event requires one, beginning commercial breaks, keeping an eye on the ESPN Plus stream, and counting the in and out of breaks. On this computer, we run a software called vMix, and we use that to play out to a source in our switcher and a source on our audio mixer. The rundown is a sheet of paper that I hand out prior to an event that outlines how our event is going to look. So it will have break format, timeouts, red hat, procedure, the length of different segments, and things like that. So it's important to keep an eye on that to make sure we're staying on pace, because often we'll have to time things pretty closely. Like, for example, with volleyball, we have an event start on the hour, and then first serve is 2 minutes after the hour. So for example, a event will start at 1 o'clock and first serve is at 1:02. That means we have 2 minutes after we go live to fill with elements that aren't commercials, which means we need to keep a close eye on our stopwatches to make sure that we are hitting our time metrics for each segment. While we're at the assistant producer station is a good time to talk about our comm system. We use Odin intercoms by RTS, which allow us to communicate with anyone on the intercom system across all of the buildings. So we have 3 main broadcast locations: the Kibby Dome, ICCU Arena, and Memorial Gymnasium. And the Odin system allows us to communicate with our camera operators, our talent, anyone on a wireless pack, basically anywhere between and in those buildings. So next up down the line is our replay station. So the replay engine we use is an Evertz DC-1 Dreamcatcher system, which we have set up in a 4-in, 2-out configuration. That means it takes in 4 different video channels that we can patch between any of our sources, and it outputs 2 channels onto sources on the switcher that we call red and blue. So the replay operator's primary job is to keep an eye on the different cameras, figure out which angle displays the play the best, and play it out onto a specific channel while communicating with the producer and director in order to show the best possible angle for that event. For our graphics, we use a program called ROS Expression that runs on its own computer. In terms of operation, this is probably the most complicated position in the control room, since there's a lot you need to learn about the program in order to operate it properly. ESPN provides different projects for the different sports, so we don't need to design graphics from scratch, but we do need to tweak the parameters to make sure that the correct team and score data is getting inserted into all of our elements. The 2 main programs that this computer runs is Expression Studio that contains all of our elements, and then something called ROS Dashboard, which we use as sort of a digital control panel. The dashboard is very important for sports like football and college basketball, where there's a lot of elements going on at the same time with a lot of individual animations on things like the scoreboard. This station has its own custom keyboard that has some additional controls on it, like take and take offline, that allows us to control the graphics that are being sent to our production switcher. Again, each of these stations has its own intercom key panel, which allows you to key into any of our production channels in order to speak with people. So sometimes our graphics people need to hop online with our talent in order to cover certain stats that we're going to highlight for the show. Again, there's a lot that goes into this. Expression has its own ecosystem, kind of spreadsheets and data links that you need to learn in order to understand what feeds into each element. But once you get your head wrapped around it and get used to the different sports, it can be pretty easy to set up. So, depending on what production you're working on, this position will be called different things. I know a lot of sports and news productions like to call it a vision mixer, and that is often what it is called when the person manning the board is following the directions of a director. So again, for our ESPN Plus productions, I like to act as producer and director. So I am calling commercial breaks and things like that, but at the same time I'm also calling camera shots. So in that case, what we call it is the technical director. They are simply following my commands and actually operating the board, since I need hands for other things. So it looks like a lot, there's a lot of buttons on this thing, but when you break it down, it's not that complicated. So you can split the board in half into 2 different MEs. There's ME1 and ME2. ME stands for mixed effect. That's just kind of the term that ROS uses to separate their panels. The idea is that you can build an effect like a split screen on the top row and then utilize it on the bottom row to build it into your actual show. But the primary thing that you would be doing on this board is just switching camera angles. Ready 1, take 1, ready 3, take 3, ready 2, take 2. My replay operator says he has a replay on channel blue. I'll go ready blue, wipe blue, that'll play the animation, bring the replay on, it'll play through to its completion, he'll give me a count, 3, 2, dump out, and wipe off. So now we are back here in the server room. So as part-time workers, you won't have to worry about 95% of this stuff. All it is networking between our different devices. This is where everything in the control room is actually mounted and connected. And this is where we share all of our sources. So really the only things you'll have to worry about is our shader station, which will be part of the camera operation training. That's where we control the settings, the exposure, and the white balance of every camera to make sure that everything is balanced properly. Over here, these are some of our patch bays, so we use that to connect sources to places that they don't typically go. For example, I need to send my ESPN Plus table feed to SDI1 source in Memorial Gymnasium so we can connect our talent monitor. That sort of unique thing would be handled in our patch bay if we aren't able to patch it directly through Ross Dashboard. Back here is the loudest part of the room. These are our primary camera patch bays. So this is what we use to actually get video signals out of the different buildings into our switcher system. So the way it works is you plug one end of the SMPTE cable into the camera, you plug the other end into the wall. That signal gets sent to, if you're in Kibbe or MEM, it gets sent to what I call a transmission room. If you're in ICCU, it gets sent straight to this. So these three cables are linked up to our different huts in the walls, and then all I have to do is plug the cable into whichever port I'm connecting the camera to, and then link that down here to our CCUs. So the way the camera path looks is that video comes out of the camera through the SMPTE cable into the wall, out of this wall into our CCUs, and then out of our CCUs into our Ross Carbonite switcher. So that's kind of an overview of all of the positions and functions of our control room. There's a lot more than this, but again, I'm going to make in-depth videos for each position that go over general procedures and protocols to make sure that we're maintaining consistency across all our ESPN Plus productions.